Welcome back one more time. Now I'm going to introduce to you a very, very important topic, which is collision detection. So collision detection is needed in most games to detect and act upon two components. I mean, whenever we have components on the screen, currently we have just one component or one player, but in real scenario, we could have multiple components. For example, if you are creating a game where a player shoots the enemy, I mean, if it is a gun or machine gun and it fires a lot of bullets, then these bullets should hit somewhere like the enemy or walls or cars or buildings, etc. Then we need to act upon this action. I mean, maybe we need to vanish our enemies, or enemies will die when they are hit by bullets. So collision detection is actually collision happens when two components intercept each other. And by default, flame game components are not collidable with each other. So if I add another component, another rectangle component over here, and then if we collide these two components with each other, then nothing will happen. To detect collision, we need to prepare something. We need to add something to our game. So you can read these documentations. There are a lot of stuffs here, but I'm not going to go through all the documentations. Or if you start reading all these documentations, then I think you will not understand many of these writings over here. So I'm going through the clear-cut steps that we need to activate collision detections in our game. So the first thing we need to do is we need to add this mixing to our game, which has collision detection. What it does, it actually enables our game so that it can keep track of the components that can collide with each other. So let's go to our game. Let's go to my flame game .dart file. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add another mixing which has collision detection. So by adding this mixing, now our game will look for collisions. Now the second thing is, I told you that by default components are not collidable. So if two components collide, then nothing will happen. To make our components collide with each other and notify us so that we can understand or we can know that a collision has took place, then we need to modify our components a little bit. We need to add something to our component, which is a hitbox. A hitbox is actually another component that actually enables collisions. We can add hitboxes to our components. We can wrap our entire component with the hitbox, or we can partially wrap just one side of our component. For example, for this component or rectangle component player, we can say that, okay, only the front part of this component will collide with each other. We are not interested in the other parts. So we need to add a hitbox at the top of this component. Or if we think that, okay, no, this whole rectangle component should be collidable, or it will look for a collision with other components, then we can wrap this entire component with another component which is called the hitboxes or hitbox. So based on the shape of the component, we have several types of hitbox, like polygon hitbox, rectangle hitbox, and circular hitbox or circle hitbox. So currently we just have one component on the screen. I want to introduce another component on the screen so that they can collide with each other. And in this process, I'm going to create a component, and I should create like a ball. Okay, let me remove that. I should create a component which is called a ball, I mean a circular component. Okay, so let me, okay, so inside this components folder, I'm going to create a new Dart file and say the name would be a ball, and that would be a class called ball, and this time it will extend a circle component. And as a constructor parameter, we can provide the radius. Since it's a circular component, we need to provide the radius. So we say required super dot radius, And also we can provide the position. So require super.position, and inside the super constructor or parent constructor, we can provide the anchor that could be center. I'm not providing any paint object. I'm not going to provide any paint object. So the default color for this ball or circle component would be white. So now I'm going to add this ball to our game. So let's go to my flamegame.dart file, and after this line, I am going to add our newly created component, which is a ball. Let's provide a radius of 20 or maybe 15 or 20. And let's say that the ball should be, I don't know, could be anywhere else, like 100 by 100. So let's say that would be vector to 100 and 100. So if I now restart this application, so this is our ball at the 100 position with the center anchor. And now what you can do is, if I now move this player or rectangle component towards this ball, and if they collide, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. It's like they are overlapping with each other. So we already have added this mixing. I mean, the game now know that this game has collidable components. Now, one thing we need to add is hitboxes. So we need to turn our components into a hitbox so that we can detect the collision. So in our rectangle component, since it's a rectangle, we are going to add a rectangle hitbox. We can add the rectangle hitbox either in the super as a parameter of super as a children, or inside this onload method. So I'm going to add the rectangle hitbox inside this onload method. So let's say add and a rectangle hitbox. That's it. We can pass arguments for rectangle hitboxes. Rectangle hitbox, we can pass the position where the hitbox will be. We can provide the size of the hitbox. We can provide the angle of the hitbox, anchor, priority, is solid, and also a very important parameter, which is a collision type. And I'm coming to this point in a moment. And also we need to add another hitbox to our ball. And since it is a circle component, we can add a circle hitbox. So previously we added the hitbox in the onload method, and let me show you how we can add a hitbox as a parameter of super constructor. So to do so, whenever we want to add a component in the constructor parameter of a super, we can provide this children attribute, and here we need to provide an array. So this array will contain all the components we want to add, and in our case we will add simply a circle, not circle component, that would be circle hitbox. That's it. So now our components, our two objects, rectangle and ball, has hitboxes, and now when they intercept or collide with each other, we can be notified. We will know that they have been collided, and we can act upon that. So how we will know that the collision has taken place or has took place? We have to add another mixing to our components. And this is very important. There is a mixing called collision callbacks, and we need to override a method on collision start, as the documentation says. So we have some callbacks. Where is that? So we have collision callbacks, and we have to override one of the collision callbacks method, like on collision start or on collision end. If we want to do something when the collision just started, then we can override the on collision start method. If we want to do something when the collision ends, then we can override on collision end method, or in general we can override on collision method. But the question is where I should add this collision callback mixing. To which components? We have two components. We have this rectangle component and we have this ball component. So where I should add? The thing is, we can add in both components this mixing, this collision callback mixing. We can add this mixing to this ball. We can add this mixing to this rectangle component, and we can override the on collision start method in both components, but that will be redundant. So thing is, now it comes the collision type that I was talking about, that we can pass another argument in each hitbox constructor argument, which is a collision type, and it has a default value, which is collision type.active. In fact, there are three types of collision. If I go to the official documentation, you see that there are three types of collisions. One is active, one is passive, and one is inactive. That means active means it will collide with other hitboxes of type active or passive. And if the collision type is passive, it will collide with other hitboxes of type active, not passive. That means if two components have collision type passive, they will not collide with each other. So active will always look for active or passive, and passive will always look for active. And also we can pass inactive. That means we have added hitboxes, but we don't want them to collide, or we are not interested in the collision. Then we can pass inactive as a type of collision type. So in this documentation, there is a scenario, and it says a lot. It says that imagine a game where there are a lot of bullets that can't collide with each other. And this is very obvious. I mean, if we have a lot of bullets, we should not be worried about collision between the bullets. The bullet should hit like the enemy or the wall or the vehicle, etc. So flying towards the players, I mean, if we have a lot of bullets that can't collide with each other, and those bullets are actually flying towards the player or the enemy, then the player would be set to collision type active, and the bullets would be set to passive. In general, when we have a lot of components of the same type and we are not interested the collision in between them, then we should set the collision type as passive. But in our case, we have just two components, right? We have just a component, a rectangle component, and a ball. So what should we do? So we just can leave them as it is. I mean, we don't provide any collision type. So this will be active, and this would be active as well. And active can collide with an active hitbox. This is completely fine. But the question is, where should I add the mixing? The rule is we should add the mixing with the active hitbox. But in our case, the ball has active hitbox, and my rectangle component also has the active hitbox. So why not we turn this circle hitbox or this ball hitbox as a passive one? So let's say the collision type will be passive. That means now this rectangle component, which has an active collision, it will look for other active or passive collisions. Or you could do the other way if you want, because we just have two components right now. Okay, so now since our rectangle hitbox is an active one, we can mix the with collision callbacks with this component, say with collision callbacks, and we can override a method which is like on collision start. So on collision start, and as a parameter of this method, we are given the intersect points. I mean, where they actually intersect, the actual point, and the collision can take place in multiple points. That's why the points are given as a set of vector, and also the position component. That means we have mixed this callback to our rectangle component. So rectangle component will actively looking for other hitboxes. So in our case, this position component will be a ball. So first of all, we need to check if other, since this is a position component like the parent class, so we need to typecast it to the ball component. So I'm saying if other is ball, because in future there could be other collidable objects. So we need to know where our rectangle component actually collides. So if it is ball, then we can do something. So right now I'm going to just print that player hits the ball. And now if I run this application and open the console and look carefully, when this component collides the ball, as soon as it collides, it says player hits the ball. Okay, so a circular hitbox is actually wrapping this circle, and a rectangle hitbox is actually wrapping this rectangle. Because we didn't provide any size of the hitbox, we didn't provide any size for the hitbox. So in general, by default, the rectangle hitbox will wrap the entire rectangle, and the circle hitbox will wrap the entire circle. And remember, these hitboxes are like some borders. They're like hollow. Okay, so if there were another circle that will collide with this circle, so at the moment they collide, there will be this on collision start method will be called. But when that circle is inside that circle and those hitboxes are not colliding each other, then this method will not be called. So you should remember that by default, hitboxes are hollow. That means empty inside. They're just like a border. Okay, so now we are now able to collide our components with each other. In the next lecture, I will do something when they collide. Maybe we can vanish the ball from the game. And maybe in the upcoming lecture, I will add other balls or a lot of balls so that our component collides with a lot of balls, and maybe we can introduce a score or something like that. Or maybe we can even turn our little example into a game. Why not?